But just like even as an adult navigating social media and, the internet and it's difficult for an adult. So I can't even imagine on someone that their brain is still developing and growing and just like body image and self-image, self-love, all this comparison and, unrealistic expectations. So I just think I think what you did is amazing.
Hi guys, I'm your host Megan Van Diepender, and this is the Empowerhood podcast. I'm so happy to have you here. Motherhood is hard, and we are going to talk about all of the hard things that just are not talked about enough. So buckle up and enjoy this episode.
All right. So, hi, Maryanna. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me. This
Yeah.
is such an honor. I absolutely love what you're doing.
Thank you.
When I look at this, when I hear your podcast and just look at all that you're doing, I really can't imagine what it would be like when I was a young mom to have all the resources you have for us put in one place. It would have been my second Bible. I'll tell you that. It's just a fantastic resource. I love what everything that you stand for and the mission you have to help moms.
Thank you so much. That means so much to me. I really appreciate it. So to everyone out there listening in today, I have Maryanna Lilly here today, and we're going to talk a little bit about mental health awareness, not only mental health as a mom, but also mental health awareness for our children and, how we can best advocate for them, as they're evolving and growing through life. So Maryanna, I know you just recently had a personal experience with one of your own children. So before we jump into that story, I'm going to have you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you. Who is Maryanna?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm Maryanna Lilly, and I'm a Christ follower. I like to start with that just because honestly, it shapes so much of who I am, and really just my faith base is just a big part of really who I am. So I married the greatest man I've ever known. His name is Roscoe Lilly, and we have 3 children together. We have an 18-year-old daughter and a 15-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son.
Okay.
And together, Roscoe and I started a church together. Can you believe this? When we were 24 years old in upstate New York.
Oh, wow.
And I know.
I didn't know you guys were that young when you started the church.
I know. Isn't it crazy? And we're going on, in September will be 20 years of our ministry together in upstate New York. And it's been exciting. It's been a journey. Yeah. And through that ministry too, I've gotten to be part of something where I'm really starting to connect more with women over the last 6 years through a ministry called Bloom. It's just a gathering of women in the area through Starpoint that is for the Capital District women. And that's really encouraging. That's been exciting.
Yeah,
So
I've been to Bloom. It was amazing.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I can't wait to go to another one. The last one I couldn't get to, but it was really fun. And I couldn't believe how many women were there. At first, I was like, there's this many women in our church, but then I realized they were from all over the place.
Yeah.
All over the capital region. But yeah, no, it was really cool. And I think it's amazing what you're doing with that. And it's
Thank you.
Very, very well done. So if anybody lives in this area, you should definitely check out Bloom. When is the next one, Maryanna?
It is on September 30th.
Okay, so after the summer.
Yeah.
So keep an eye out for that.
Definitely. And all churches, can come from wherever you are. And it's just really kind of your heartbeat too. Just women encouraging other women, empowering other women, getting to know, making some friends, that kind of thing. So, and just encouraging your faith. So I'd love for you to come out.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll definitely be there. All right, Maryanna. So let's get back to mental health awareness. So you had an experience recently with one of your own children. Do you want to explain to us, kind of what you went through and how you navigated through this circumstance?
Sure. So when I answer this, you'll notice I'm kind of vague in some of my details. And the reason why for that is I just want to point out is I've learned a little bit. I've learned a little bit about sharing maybe too much about my children on social media. Mm-hmm. And, I had to stop and look and be like, whoa, what if a future employee heard this story? What if a future opportunity came up that this could possibly harm my child without me even being aware whatsoever now, right? Like, we look at so many famous athletes who lose their scholarships or something from a mistake. I don't want to be that for my
Oh,
child. So
yeah, for sure.
I
I
try
mean,
to,
that stuff doesn't disappear, right? Even if it's
right.
not something bad, it might be bad to them in their mind too. So
Mm-hmm.
I love that you're really
Yeah.
thoughtful.
Yeah. And, my children have taught me that, just that some things are just for us personally. Like, I don't have to post everything because I am an extrovert. I love connecting with everybody.
Yeah.
And I just think everyone wants to see this amazing thing my child just did. And they're like, Mom, listen, some things are just for us. So they've taught me so much
Yeah.
about that. So our story with social media, like so many, really start with your kids, usually about 13, because most platforms will say kids need to be 13. And so that gives us some kind of guideline to when we allow our kids, because the actual platform usually doesn't allow us to. So if we're going to follow that, like, okay, that's a good guideline. So when one of my children turned 13, I was just so excited because they had been begging and begging starting when they were 12 to be on social media. And at that time, it was the really fun thing and popular thing was Snapchat and Instagram. That's particularly what they wanted. At that point, it was already Facebook was for me, like old ladies,
Yeah.
And so, I just want that. And, I said, no, no, no. Like, it says 13, you have to be on. And all my friends have it. They won't even communicate with me without Snapchat. I'm not in the know. I don't get invited because I don't have this. And as a mom, I'm like, fear of missing out. I'm that extrovert, right? I'm like, I don't want my kid to miss out. I don't want them to be excluded. I want them to be able to communicate if that's the new thing, And I could not wait to give them their Instagram on their 13th birthday. And on the mirror, I wrote like, happy birthday, you get Instagram. I was just like,
best birthday ever.
right. And I'm literally thinking I'm the cool mom. I'm like such a cool mom, like, like they were so happy. And I'm not kidding you, within such a short amount of time, my husband and I watched this child really change. Like, and the thing is, it took us 2 weeks to figure it out ourselves, because it just takes a minute, right? And you're like,
well, because you would hope that wouldn't happen, right? Like, in a perfect world, like that wouldn't happen.
Yeah. And it wasn't on my radar. To even really think about it, I don't think. And it's like to have an eye open to say, okay, how's this affecting them? I was just like on my merry way, like happy they were happy. And we just kept being like, hey, where's this kid? Hey, where's our child? And they'd be in their room. They never used to just tuck away, hide away in their room. And wherever we found them, they were literally glued to their phone.
Oh, wow.
Beforehand, they wouldn't even know where their phone was, and that's a whole nother topic that we can talk about. When do you give your child a phone and that kind of thing?
Right.
But we hadn't had a problem up until then. The phone was a safety and communication, for them when they went to middle school. Call mom when the ride is here. I'm outside.
Right.
It's that at practice, just kind of a communication safety tool. And then all of a sudden it became something different. And what I learned just through starting to ask a few questions was this child explained to me that they had to like all these posts. And of course, can you imagine, she may go to a really large school. They don't even know people that they are following them. And they have to like and comment on every single post. And I was like, no, you don't. You don't have to do that. And they explain, yes, I do. Because if I don't, in a matter of 30 minutes, I'll get a really mean text sent to me saying how awful I am. And, all these things. And I was like, you're kidding. This cannot be true.
How does people have time to do that?
Right.
I guess you do when you're in middle school.
Exactly. That's exactly right. That's what I found out. I was like, they have.
It's really not funny though. That's scary. Like, what is going on?
Right. And that's what happened. And it didn't take a half an hour. It took actually 10 minutes and her phone started ding, ding. Because let's see what happens if you don't respond, if you don't make a comment in 30 minutes. Is this really happening? 10 minutes. And I was like, do you even know this person? And they're like, no. And they were the meanest texts, comments.
How did they get their phone number?
They DM them because they are now.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're now on, that platform. They have direct contact to them. And it it was like a full-time job. Literally, this child was just like part-time job, at least, kind of commenting, and such fake responses. And so they were learning at such a young age to say what society thought they should say,
Right.
you know?
Right. And that
And it was,
pressure to just show up, even if you don't want to show up, like
yeah,
for something that might not matter to you. That just
that's a good
sounds
point.
very weird.
Yeah. And that's a good way to put it, is a really great way to put it. I think the time invested was not something that child would have chosen to
Right.
invest in. That's not what they thought they were getting into.
Right.
They thought it was going to be fun, and it really created so much stress and anxiety that they had a hard time sleeping. They withdrew. They were worried at all times
Oh my
about,
God.
yeah, it just changed them, to be
Yeah.
honest. It really,
Yeah.
really changed them. And I don't know why it took me so long to realize that I could control this. I was the parent. But in my mind, I don't know why this happened, but I really was like, oh no, oh, this is going to be tough to navigate this social media thing. I didn't think it'd be so hard. And I just kind of let it go on
Yeah.
until a wise friend looked at me and said, aren't you the parent? Like,
Right.
I'm pretty sure that you can change your mind. And for some reason, it took someone else to speak that into me,
Yeah.
that I could change my mind. I made a mistake as a parent. And that's the conversation, the narrative that started to happen with our child. We said, hey, you know what? Your brain is still forming. This is causing you so much stress. And we really believe we made a mistake. This isn't good for you. And we want you to go off it. Woo! That was not easy. That was a whole nother dynamic.
Okay.
Right. I mean,
Well,
this
right,
was
because I mean,
right.
leaving it, I'm sure would cause some stress as well, because everyone else is still on it, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So we just decided to take an extreme measure. We are not someone of like a lot of means or anything like that, but this child was so bent on it, and really there's just no way we would ruin their life if we took
Mm.
this away from them in their little minds, right?
Right.
That's
Yeah.
what it felt like.
Yeah.
And so what we offered to them was, if they were to stay off social media until they were 18, we would buy them a car when they turned
Okay.
16.
Okay. Did it work?
And not at first. Isn't that crazy? Again, they just, because they're so young, because they can't think to the future. That's our job to help
Yeah.
them do,
Yeah.
is to
You're right.
think to the future that they cannot see.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to really break it down for them. What it would it look like if you and your friend could drive to school, could drive to Stewart's, a local ice cream shop here, right? And
Right.
get some ice cream. Like, can you imagine really trying to paint a picture that was worth it to them?
Mm-hmm.
Or you could sit in your room all alone and make comments to people you don't even know. Your choice, like
Right.
really having to create that narrative.
Yeah.
And of course, they sought out wise counsel, which was their lunch table.
Oh,
Yeah. And they were
okay.
like, no way, I couldn't do it. But it just took one kid to say, hey, I would do it. If my parents offered me that, I would definitely take the car. And that was
Seriously.
it. That's all my child
Okay.
needed, was just one person, right? Sometimes in life, we just need one
Yeah.
person. I needed that one mom to say, hey, you can change your mind. My child needed just someone to say, hey, you should take the car. And they did. And they
That's
stayed off
amazing.
social
Do you
media.
think
So
they needed that, like, someone on their side to be like, or like they were looking for a reason to get off of it? Like, because do you think they felt stuck? Since like that's what society says you're supposed to do right now, right? You're 13, 14 years old. You should be on social media, posting pictures or talking to everyone at school. Like, it's probably hard for them to leave, right? Because that's what everyone is doing. So like, do you think they needed that reason to leave? Instead of just a
absolutely
parent being like, you need to
right.
get off of it,
Our child needed a reason. They needed to be able to tell their friends something positive. They needed to be able to say, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm not on, give me your snap. Oh, I'm not on snap. What? I mean, the reaction is so strong
Mm-hmm.
when one of my children say that they are not on social media, that they just quickly go to, yeah, because my parents are giving me a car if I stay off it. And it just gave them something to hold on to not
Mm-hmm.
feel dumb, to be left out, to be
Right.
isolated, to be the one kid,
Right.
And so, that everyone is saying that is so weird. Instead, they were like, isn't that cool? And
Yeah.
so it just kind of empowered them to just be a little bit more confident about it. And as time goes on, they were very confident about it,
Oh, good.
and,
Now, did you do this with all of your kids or just one of them?
yeah, we've done it with all of our children since
Okay.
then because it worked.
Mm-hmm.
And the neat thing is that the younger siblings watched it unfold. We were
Right.
able we had a plan, right? We
Mm-hmm.
actually had a plan. This is what we're doing.
Right.
You know, you guys don't really have an option. Like, we
Mm-hmm.
didn't give the younger two an option to start it and go off of it. But
Mm-hmm.
we just said, hey, if you don't go on it, this is what this will look like. We trust you to make the wise decision. You can see here, and we're able to talk about it a lot more with stats because at the time, we were really kind of the pioneers in this with our children.
Right.
Like there wasn't a lot of research that we have today and to show
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, the statistics are really really scary and disturbing. I know you sent one of them to me, but I mean, I kept doing a little bit more research and talked to my husband. He even was like, especially with girls, and I know you have two girls. I have a daughter. It's just like 3 or more hours on social media per day puts kids at a higher risk, for mental health
Mhm.
problems.
Right.
And if you think about it, I'm sure kids are on, social media more than 3
Mhm.
hours a day. 13% of kids, report depression. 33% report anxiety. 25% of ages 18 to 25 report mental illness. If you got to think if they're starting at such a young age, by the time they get to 18 or 25, that's a lot of years,
Mhm.
of feeling anxious. Yeah, and then like the 30% of girls, I think you sent me this one, reported considering suicide, and
Mhm.
that's just so devastating to me. I mean, especially having a daughter, but just like even as an adult navigating social media and the internet and it's difficult for an adult, so I can't even imagine on someone that their brain is still developing and growing, and just like body image and self-image, self-love, all this comparison and, unrealistic expectations. So I just think I think what you did is amazing. I'm definitely going to take that advice with me because my daughter's 7 and obviously I don't have to deal with that yet. But I know, this world that we live in, it's hard, right? Like to navigate it as a parent. Now, after you did this with your kids, did you see like an enormous difference in their behavior?
So the way we like to say it is they had a detox.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever fasted from electronics before.
Mm-hmm.
I know myself, it takes a minute to
Mm-hmm.
I'm not continually looking for my phone. It's like just an extension of our
Mm-hmm.
arms and hands at this point, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it was similar for them. Like they held their phone. It's interesting. They held their phone, but there was nothing on it. And they were
Right.
constantly looking at it. And then they would be like, oh, there's nothing on it. Like you could
Right.
see them processing it. And eventually they got back to their extroverted self, their storytelling self at the dinner table. And we watched that light come back, but it did take a while. I
Okay.
will say the scars of the bullying, like some bullying happened in that short amount of time that
Mm-hmm.
they were on. Someone sent a horrible video addressed to my child.
Oh my
I just
goodness.
was in shock by it. Now I would not be in shock by that. At the time, though, it was all new.
Okay.
That took a little bit longer. That took a lot of conversations, a lot of healing
Okay.
to take place. But the initial just separating from the burden of having to engage with, like you said, people they didn't really care to,
Mm-hmm.
take up precious time that they would have rather been outside playing with their dog, you know,
Right.
balance started to return.
Okay.
Joy started to return. The light started to return.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. That's really
Mhm.
good to know for
Yeah.
sure. Um, no, I mean, I think like I'm going to dig a little deeper because you do have teenagers. So, with all this like statistics and depression, anxiety, bullying, school violence, like how do we navigate? Like, what do you think the best way to navigate this is as parents? Like, how do we do
Yeah.
this?
Right. I mean, I think that it it seems so overwhelming. And sometimes I want to pack everyone up, move to 1,000 acres in Montana with no Wi-Fi, homeschool.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Just like, oh, it gets overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other part of that I can lean towards is everyone's doing it. It is what it is. Technology's moving on. I need to move with it. There's nothing I can do about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to fall somewhere in the middle. I'm not saying I have all the answers for sure. I
Mm-hmm.
don't. I'm learning along with you. But I like to think that that if we can get to the root, the
Mm-hmm.
heart of it, it is more about balance in leaning toward relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Just really relationship, conversation. And I think that starts in our home,
Yeah.
the violence that we're experiencing in our schools, the social media bullying, all those things. If we can make a difference in our home around our dinner table, right? That's where it begins. I can't make the choice for my neighbor. You can't make the choice for me. We can choose what we're doing for our family, the conversations that we're going to have, and the priorities that we're going to make. And so really just leaning into relationship with our child, with our families, and just really making things like the dinner table matter and count, and know we're going to have some hard conversations. We're going to open up conversation at dinner, and then making bedtime routine count. Just really, it's a lot of listening, a lot of taking the time to listen. What does that mean? That means we have to slow down, right?
Yeah.
That means we can't have every meal in the minivan going through the drive-through at McDonald's and rushing from one place to another. Not in this lifetime. Not if we are going to really have the heartbeat of what is happening mentally and spiritually with our children. Because you think, oh, the car is a great conversation. It can absolutely be one of the best places. However, we need to make eye contact.
I was just going to say eye to eye. Yeah.
Yeah, eye to eye. They need to see us as spouses interacting at the dinner table, and how, and they need to learn how to listen to our day as well and respond to that and have empathy. Wow, Mom, I'm sorry you had a bad day. Oh, wow. And learn how to encourage us as we are encouraging them and being models for that. And so for our family, the dinner table is an answer to part of that, just really making sure that we are taking that time to carve it out. Like, this isn't an option. If we're going to be involved in all these things, allow these different things speaking into our children, we need to have a balance with that.
Yeah, I totally agree with all of that. I really do think it starts, with the root cause of things. We could talk about, guns, all this stuff, but it doesn't matter, because it's actually like how we're raising our children and who we are being as an example. And I think you said at one point, you had to be the parent and not the friend. And I think a lot of times, like, I have to remind myself of that with my daughter, because I'm not, as much as close as we are, and I am her best friend, and I always want to be her best friend, I'm her parent, and we have to do the hard things and, have the hard conversations now and be vulnerable and imperfect and, admit we had the bad day and it wasn't amazing and, daisies and sunflowers, to show them that you don't always have to be perfect. You can talk about the hard things too. And it's not really a choice. You have to talk about them and continue to have them open up to you. Like yours is at the dinner table. We do talk a lot at the dinner table. And of course, my daughter's younger. So we're kind of just getting to that point where we're like, nope, I'm going to sit here and wait until you talk to me, about it. Because as you said, you got to start, a healthy foundation from when they're young, right? And I think just like talking about those hard things and showing vulnerability is huge and shows, empathy. You're showing them empathy, and in return, they're going to be able to show that to their friends and peers, and you're going to raise a kinder, stronger child. I think a lot of our society, it's like if something's wrong or you don't know the answer, you can't do something, you feel like a sort of shame. And instead of that, I just like to release it and just be like, it's okay to not know something. Like, no one is perfect, right? That's how we learn and we grow. And, you make a mistake and then you fix it, right? Or you don't do it again, and being able to understand our children and talk to them about these things, I think is going to be huge when they get to those teenage years, when you can have, even harder conversations with them, when more serious things, start to come up. do you ever look back when your kids were little and think like, would you do something different? Or do you take those all as lessons and are like, this is kind of who I am today?
Oh, well, first of all, everything you just said, I'm just like, yes, Megan, yes. Like that vulnerability, just being real. I think, oh my goodness, yes, if I could do things different, I would. Like I it's different than regret, but I would, like I said, the resources that you have here, this podcast, all of it would have been so helpful to me as a young mom to maybe steer around some of those potholes that I hit pretty hard, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I did too. I mean, this is why I started this.
Right.
So I didn't have this. It's kind of like, let's talk about all these super, super hard things that aren't talked about that make people feel really uncomfortable and, less than. And I feel like it goes the same for our children. It's like, you don't have to actually feel like that. If you just talk about it and put it out there, it kind of gets rid of it and you move on and you do better next time.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. And I would say if the one thing that I wish I had done differently for myself as a mom was really just get off the whole, take myself out of the game of comparison, and maybe I was the only one in the game. I don't think I was.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. But I finally got to the point where I said, you know what? I would scroll and scroll and I would look for inspiration. Like I would go to social media for inspiration. What is she doing? She seems like a great mom. But quickly the inspiration would turn to me judging myself, comparing myself, and comparing and comparing and comparing. And I never seemed to measure up. I was hard on myself. And I was hard on my children. I did not think I was hard on my children, but I think there were, maybe not all the time, but I did have expectations of them based on what I would see in other families. Yeah. And so I think that I quickly started, with the help of my husband to realize, oh my goodness, this comparison is hurting all of us. And we need to decide what are the values for the Lilly family. Like what is the Lilly family value?
Yeah, we have them up on the wall. I love that.
For you. Yeah. And those will be written on their hearts, but also ours as a mom to go back because we shift and we will be presented with so many opportunities that are amazing sometimes. And so it's hard to know what to say yes to, what to say no to create that balance in our lives when we're just think more and more and more and more and more. But then you're like, okay, well, we need to carve out some time for those conversations, for bath time to be precious and not rushed through, to be able to just go for a walk and stop and really smell the roses, like pick a dandelion and be in awe over it for 5 minutes and not have to be like, hurry, we have to get back for practice. Hurry, you have to go to this next activity. And so I think just really knowing what your family values are, creating those together with your spouse, really writing them on your heart, theirs, like you writing them on your wall. And so you can go, hey, this is what the Lillys do. The Lillys value dinner, right? That's not a non-negotiable for us. Like from the time we're going to always just create time to have a healthy dinner together. The Lillys do hard things. That's one of our values. And like, you know what? Kids, you can do it because we do hard things. And let me tell you, that has gotten through learning to tie your shoe, through climbing high mountain peaks. Like we can do this too, facing death in our family. We can do hard things because we're going to do them together. We value, one of ours is, of course, church is non-negotiable. It's not an option. We just make that a priority. And let me tell you, if we hadn't decided those things ahead of time, someone would have decided for us, a coach, an activity, whatever it may be. The world will get busy and it will decide for you.
You're right.
I wish that I hadn't let so many other people dictate the really younger years. And I allowed that to happen, and so luckily,
I think it's like unconsciously though, right? It's like you don't know it's happening. I think that's like the point of social media and why it's so addicting, because you just get sucked in. It's like when someone's like, I'm just gonna like quickly check my phone. It's like no one quickly checks their phone. You're gonna be on there for at least a half an hour, right? It's like a time suck. you don't know what you're doing, and then you're on the phone for an hour, scrolling and comparing yourself to someone else's life when yours is amazing. It has its pros and cons, of course, as adults. For children, I'm still not sure, but if I had my way, my daughter probably won't have a phone until she's 18, but that's like me saying that, and she's 7. It's already really hard. I have no idea what it's like as a teenager.
It's hard.
Yeah.
And you're right. There is pros and cons. And I'm not here today to just completely bash social media. I mean, it has so many, our kids can learn more than any other generation. They actually know more than any other generation because of the knowledge at their fingertips.
Right.
So there's good. But with that comes, they're saying that our kids are also behind socially about 3 years comparatively to what you and I were as children.
Right. Right.
Everything has balance,
on technology. Yeah.
Yep. So there's
balance. That's pretty crazy to think about. Because they always have their head down in a phone instead of, communicating eye to eye. Well, that's why I said the conversations, eye to eye are so important because, we've always said to our daughter, like, you need to look in people's eyes, don't, when you're talking to someone, you look at their face, that's really, really important. And I think mental health as a mom, setting the example for our children, and taking care of ourselves. And I know for myself, I never like to portray kind of like social media that I'm perfect because I'm far from perfect and I make mistakes. And as much as I try to be a good example, when I do make a mistake, I always make myself go apologize, because I want her to be able to do that as well, and what are some of the things that you do for your own mental health?
Well, I remember people just saying, take time for yourself. It's so important. Take time for yourself. And so for those moms who are listening who have kids in diapers, I would say, I'm not going to say take time for yourself because that is just it's hard for those in that season when your kids are in diapers. Ooh, it's a tough season. But that saying that's what is it? Like the days are long and the years are short.
Yes. Yeah.
It is so true. Those days you're like, ooh, when is my spouse going to come home? Or, ooh, is it bedtime? Yeah. They can be tough, super fun, so sweet, but it can be tough to find that time for yourself.
Yeah.
And so when I was younger in those stages, I'm more of art kind of fills me up, music fills me up. And so I would really carve out time here and there, 15 minutes. Sometimes I get 5 minutes if my child is sleeping and I put on headphones and plug them into my piano and just play. And I could go from frustrated and to just really peaceful in one song,
Yeah.
Everyone, you have your own thing, right?
Oh, everybody, yeah, for sure. I think everybody does. And I think you have to, right? As a mom, whether you have small children or older children, because I think every season of their growth has some sort of challenges. We're never gonna get over it. I was telling my daughter that the other day. She had something come up and was all upset about it, and I was like, honey, obstacles never stop coming at you. I'm 38 years old, and something happens probably every day where I'm like, all right, I gotta get past this, or something difficult happens. And I just think as parents, when we're looking at these statistics, I feel like my blood pressure probably went up just reading these.
Yeah.
It's how do we keep our sanity so we can help our children? Because they, like you said, are thinking in the now, and we're thinking what's going to happen, when my daughter's 13 or when my child's 18, when they go out on their own, how are we going to, protect them? But I really think just taking care of yourself and, focusing on what you can control, because a lot of this stuff's out of our control. And I think if you try to focus on the social media aspect or the comparison or what someone else is doing, and you're not looking at your family as a whole, you're just going to get lost in a black hole, and it's just going to zap your energy. So I think just focusing on you, taking care of you, setting the example, and, just putting the time in with your family like you guys do at dinner, just having those conversations. What else would you add to that? What advice could you give to women out there right now kind of going through the same thing with their teenagers?
Yeah, I would say what you just said is so important that we should really lean into. Is you said you can only control what you can control. And so we are going to invest what we can in ourselves. We're going to do what we can to fill our own buckets up so we have something to pour out, right? That's what we're saying. It's like we can't serve our children out of a depleted bucket. We need to find a way to fill that. If you're an extrovert, do not isolate yourself. It just takes one friend. Find a church that you can belong to make some friends. Whatever it can be, you just need one, and don't give up on that. To find someone who can share your moral values so your children are hearing a similar message with the people you're surrounding yourself with is so important. So do not isolate yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
And then secondly, that control piece, know that you're doing your best, right? So it doesn't mean perfect. It doesn't mean you won't make mistakes. That's what I heard you say. I agree with that. It means doing your best with what you have today to give to your family and to pour in. So just really knowing we can control the input. We can control what we're putting into our children, what we're allowing to be put into their sweet minds and their sweet hearts. But as much as we want as moms to know it's a guarantee, to know what the outcome is, the honest truth is we do not. We have heard time and time again those stories. We've seen interviews that are painful with these precious moms who have thought they have done a good job with this input, but for some reason, their child suffers with mental illness. I don't wish that on any mom, and any mom who's listening. Like, you cannot blame that on yourself, and you can control the input into them. But when it comes down to it, they will make their choices themselves. So when they leave your home, they might make choices that are absolutely not what you taught them. You can only take responsibility for the input you've given them. You cannot take responsibility for the output and the choices that they make.
Yeah, that is so true. And I think that's, really all we can focus on, again, like what you control. I think it's Brene Brown says, everyone is doing the best they can with the tools that they have right now.
That's right.
And that's really like all that you can do. Just do your best. Have those hard conversations, feel really, really uncomfortable. Like, I still sweat when my daughter cries, but I just like sit there and sweat and listen. And, you just got to do it. Right. And, I still I keep thinking of what you said. Like, I wasn't there to be their friend. I'm there to be their mom. And I think that can be the hardest thing ever because we, as humans, we want to please our children and, we want to just do what's best for them. But sometimes the best thing can be the hardest thing. And I think we all just need to keep that in mind. So if someone's out there and, sees their child, getting depressed, because I've definitely heard that with social media and phones and whatnot, in the teenage years, have that hard conversation. It could change everything, right? Because like you said with your child, maybe they didn't even consciously realize that they were, slipping into this depression. So you kind of have to be that advocate for them. So, I mean, it's hard as moms, we're advocating for our own health. Obviously, I predominantly work with women as a coach, and it's hard. Postpartum is hard. To recover yourself, and then you have this other tiny little human that grows really fast to take care of and worry about their own mind as well and their health. So
and I think
be kind.
Be kind. And this month, Megan, with the May is Mental, Health Awareness Month. Just, I love it because it kind of makes us stop and pause and lean into and just check, similar to what we would do with a yearly physical when we bring our kids for that yearly healthy checkup.
Yeah.
Just stop and pause and say, hey, what about their mental health? And just kind of look, are they still in the same sport as they were last year? Are they still, talking to similar good friends, or have their friend group changed?
Yeah.
How is that influencing it? Because it kind of is a slow fade, right? And so to stop and really evaluate your child's mental health on their behalf, just kind of asking yourself some questions, of course, yourself as well, but that's what I like about this month is just kind of just stepping back and saying, okay, let's look at this. How are we doing as a family? And what changes need to happen to make us healthier tomorrow than we were yesterday.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like I do that when I look at pictures from a year ago or something. But yeah, I mean, May is a great month to do that. And I think being open to changes too, because I feel like a lot of people just are not open to change. I don't like change. I mean, I don't think any human being really likes change. But to be like, okay, maybe that's not working for us, it's
Right.
okay. Let's make a change that's going to benefit the whole family and, make us
Yeah.
happier and more united. So yeah,
Love
I love
that.
that. I'm going to have to remember that every
Yeah.
single May. Um,
Yeah.
or like even just check in, every couple months and like you said, check the friend list. What activities is your child doing? How do they seem? Do they seem happy? I think that's so important. And same thing with you, check in with yourself. Like, am I doing things for myself? Am I taking time for myself?
Mm-hmm.
How are my thoughts? Am I,
Right.
if you're journaling, you could look back at your journal and, take a peek and be like, oh God, that looks bad. Or I feel
That's
really
fantastic.
happy,
Such a good
That's
idea.
why I love journaling. It's great. But yeah,
That's
I
a
think all of this is like really, really good stuff. I'm trying to think if I had anything else in my notes. Did you have anything else, Maryanna, that you wanted to add to it?
No, just I think maybe one thing is to really, I think on that checklist to just check your marriage, and
Yeah.
make it a priority. And it will be shocking how if we can keep that as healthy as we can, it really affects the whole family, affects
Yes.
you as a person,
Yeah.
and just to make that a priority and check how are we doing, really maybe making date nights a priority, put it on the calendar, make it a non-negotiable. And I know for me, my kids, they really loved seeing that. Are you going on a date with daddy?
Yeah.
They just thrived on that as little kids, and they still do. They know, oh, it's Friday. Mom and dad are doing this. It's like their
Yeah.
day.
I love
So I would
that. Yeah,
encourage,
great. My daughter loves when we have like a babysitter. She thinks it's so
right?
exciting. And I
Yeah,
do think that is so, so important. I mean, just the way you communicate with your child, you should be communicating with your partner, as well. Communication is, key for all of it. And I feel like whenever I have felt, any like some sort of tension or whatever in our relationship, I'm like, oh, I just need to talk about it. I just need to, and once you talk about it, you're like, oh, this was nothing, So just
yeah,
communicate, keep that open. And yeah, you're right. Definitely take some time just to be together too alone. I think that sets a great example, for your children
yeah.
as well. Well, I'm trying to think. I feel like I had other questions and they're probably going to come to me later. But this was so, so good. And I really hope that it encourages, any parent out there, going through some issues right now with their children or just bringing awareness to, look out for these things. And I think like you said around 13, but I feel like even younger children, have cell phones and are on technology, more now at a younger age. So you might even have to start looking out for it, earlier.
That is so true. And I don't want to be remiss by mentioning that, like, for our little boys, like having that technology is truly like having pornography in their pocket. And I hate to be so extreme, but it's true. If you do not get those parental guidelines on your phone, so there's tons of different apps that can keep your kids safe from kind of safe. I don't want to say completely safe,
right?
but it
put
really
some boundaries up there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I would really suggest looking into some of those. I know like Apple phones have that, or parental controls,
Absolutely.
any kind of parental controls, and letting your kids know, like, you don't need to keep it a secret.
Right.
Let them know, I can see this. I can see what you're seeing. You're not allowed to be on YouTube. You're not allowed to be on, because I mean, just this week, Wall Street Journal put unbelievable article about how they did, they created all these different profiles for TikTok as 13-year-old girls. They were fake, just to see what the results would be. And it was unbelievable. They were inundated with videos on suicide, with body shaming, so many, so self-harm. And these were not positive things that were geared towards them. I do not know why this is happening, but it's happening. Right. And so to not have those filters on, especially if you feel like for your family, your child does need a cell phone, for instance, or, just, I really encourage that you having as much control over that as you can, just to protect them.
Yeah, that's great. And I assume like Facebook and Instagram have these controls as well, right? Or do they not have? I'm not sure.
I'm not an expert. I do not know that.
Okay.
I didn't find those for social media, for those platforms particularly. the safety was more of like, it won't allow my child to even create that account or go to a website.
Okay.
It's more along those lines.
So more
I
of
think.
like the iPhone controls.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's really good to know. And I think that'd be, really helpful. Even if, they need a phone, they're still going to have these boundaries that they can be within. Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Maryanna. So if anyone is looking to find you, where can they find you on the internet?
Oh, they can follow me at Bloom, starpoint.bloom, Maryanna Lilly, and on Insta or Facebook.
Okay, great. So I will link that below. And the name of your church, Starpoint Church?
Yes.
And is that starpointchurch.com?
It's actually starpoint.church.
.church. Okay. All right, great. Thank you so much for being here.
Megan.
And this was amazing.
Been so fun. Yeah, it's been
so much information for mamas out there. And yeah, I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right, I'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. Empowerhood is brought to you by Flourish Everyday Coaching. Check them out in the link below. And again, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. If you could take 60 seconds of your time and leave us an Apple review, this helps share the news about this podcast and help women all over the world. If you want to see the video version of this podcast, you can go to our YouTube channel and subscribe there. Thank you so much, and we'll see you at the next episode.